Hey everybody, it is Jessica from This Week in Global Health. I'm reporting from the International AIDS Conference in South Africa in Durban right now. And I wanted to tell you about this yesterday, but I didn't have time, so I'm doing it now. But I'm excited to tell you about this fantastic scientific data that came out and was presented yesterday that helps explain why women and girls are at increased risks for HIV infection for both biological and sociological reasons. So there's been a huge focus on women and girls because women and girls are very vulnerable to HIV infection and have a higher risk than men. For instance, in South Africa, teenage girls can have 8 times more of an infection risk than teenage boys. One of the first studies that I'm going to tell you about is this phylogenetic study that was done, and what they did was, using phylogenetics, they linked recent HIV infection and basically found out where recent transmission was coming from, who was infecting who, right? And they found that a lot of recent HIV infection comes from women 25 to 40 years of age that are going to men that same age. Now, then these men of that same age were linked for recent transmission to young women under 25. So basically what you have is you've got older women 25 to 40 that are infecting men their same age that then infect young women, and then these young women obviously will then become women older and then infecting men their same age just like that. So the cycle just keeps going on. What's happening here though is, so they used biomedical evidence to show that this transmission cycle was happening, but really what's one of the things that you have to think about if we want to tackle this problem is this community norm of age disparate sex, where you have young women under 25 that are sleeping or having sexual relations with older men that are almost 9 years on average older than them, and these men also have higher viral loads, which puts them even at greater risk to get infected. So there was another study that presented evidence showing that the vaginal microbiome could be implicated in increased risk in African women. What the study did was they looked at the microbiome of the vagina in African women, and they found that there is a common bacteria in some African women that promotes inflammation. In fact, if women have this bacteria, they are 19 times more likely to have inflammation, and then they're actually 13 times more likely to have HIV infection. Now this makes sense because HIV, the virus, loves inflammation. It targets cells that are activated and because of the inflammation. So it gives it great target cells to infect. So having presence of this bacteria, inflammation, potentially could put women at increased risk for infection because they have this bacterial species in their vaginal microbiome.
So the last study that got really excited about yesterday that was presented is a study that looked at why tenofovir, a vaginal microbicide gel, was not as effective in preventing HIV infection in women that used it. So pre-exposure prophylaxis, otherwise known as PrEP, is a way to prevent HIV infection. It can be done by taking oral HIV drugs, such as Truvada, and when taken daily and with high adherence, it has been shown to be highly effective at preventing HIV infection. Or these preventative HIV drugs can be applied in a formula topically, such as in a vaginal microbicide gel, like tenofovir. Well, tenofovir has been tested in a previous trial, and the gel had 44% efficacy at reducing HIV risk. But this is not as high as people had expected, so they thought, well, why is this? Well, one new study looks into this, and they think that possibly it could be because of the presence of some bacteria or the lack of other bacteria. So the study looks into women that took this drug, and women with over 50% of lactobacilli in their microbiome had 61% efficacy with tenofovir versus 18% efficacy in women that had actually lower levels of this lactobacilli species. Now, specifically, one species could be responsible for the lower efficacy. This is Gardnerella. Gardnerella, apparently, the scientists were able to show, takes up the drug. So if you have this Gardnerella species in your vaginal microbiome, if you're taking tenofovir, it basically eats it up. It just takes it into itself. So there's not as much drug present to fight against the virus. So you can see how the presence of this Gardnerella taking up the drug, reducing the levels of the drug in the vaginal microbiome could lead to reduced efficacy.
So that's it for the science updates. I wanted to tell you about them. They were really exciting and presented yesterday. What I love about them is that, one, they're focusing on women and they're helping to explain why women biologically and sociologically, and proving it with biological data, which of course, as you know, I'm a biomedical scientist, so I'm all about this, but helping to explain why women are more at risk, and especially African women, which, you know, their HIV risk is just several times higher than men. So I just think it's fantastic. It's so much more information for the field. It's exciting, and I'm looking forward to see more trials looking into these things and what the community is going to start talking about with regarding policy. Now, it's a little too early for policy, I think, but I think for sure we need to be looking more at this and seeing, having replicated studies to confirm all of this data.